Welcome to the Uncommon Podcast, where we discuss real estate, entrepreneurship, leadership, and faith. Today, Sam and I are so honored to be able to interview Jason Fisher. Jason is the CEO of Cushman Wakefield, the Lund Company, one of the largest full-suite real estate companies in our region. And Jason took the time to sit down and talk about his experience running that company, some of the things that he sees on both the brokerage and the management side, in addition to a lot of the development work that he's done. Maybe just give us like a 2-minute background on Jason Fisher.
Wow. Born and raised a Nebraskan in the Omaha area, which always leads to the where'd you go to high school question.
Always.
Omaha is such a high school focus town, which I didn't. That's a whole nother conversation. I went to a boarding school in central Nebraska.
Really?
And then slid down to Lincoln, chased a biology degree and a med school path that obviously didn't happen.
I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very interesting.
But is that where you met your wife?
We did meet in college, but sort of superficially, she was bartended with two good college buddies of mine at Laszlo's when it was all the rage. And so got to know her because I was on the other side of the bar quite a bit.
Yeah.
And but she was, I always tease her. I had a nickname for her, but she was in a committed relationship, and I thought she was way too good for me anyway. So I was afraid to ever hit on her or anything. But my buddies knew that I had a special fondness for her all along, but she never knew that. Until we sort of reacquainted 12 years ago. I was going through a divorce, and she was as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I did not know that. That's really interesting. And you are the CEO of Lund.
Yes.
Lund Cushman Wakefield. Is that the whole official name?
Cushman Wakefield, the Lund Company. Yeah.
Okay. What does that look like?
So it's interesting because our organization's gotten way more complex since we joined the alliance firm. But Cushman Wakefield's second or third largest real estate firm in the world. And they have an alliance program like a lot of them do, CB Richard Ellis and Colliers and others, whereby we remain independently owned and operated. And it sort of functions like a franchisee agreement. So we get to tap into resources. We get a platform to do deals, all over North America or, anywhere in the world, realistically, if that opportunity presented itself. So that's what we do. And there's about, I think there's 32 alliance firms that are similar to us, which ends up being a really nice business network that you can bounce ideas off of, and kind of an extended board because they function similarly.
Yeah. And Lund is you do property management, you do development, you're the brokerage as well.
Yeah.
You're kind of a full shop, isn't that what Lund is?
Yeah, I'd say, the quote unquote full suite of services in real estate, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And sometimes that, brings complications. Different than most commercial firms. And over the last 10 years, a big emphasis of what we do is multifamily management.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of, commercial brokerage firms that never got into that. We did, fortunately.
Okay.
And that's the biggest component of our business now. We're in 6 states, over 23,000 units last check. So I think that puts us top 30 in the country.
Top 30 in the country.
Which is crazy.
Oh my goodness. So are you the largest in Omaha?
Yes. Although I don't know how many units Selden has because they have a lot in Texas too. But I think they're under 20,000. So yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious how you went from chasing a biology degree to being the CEO of this massive full suite real estate company.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Let's see. The bullet points are, so I didn't really time. I switched from engineering is the full story. So I was mechanical engineering for 2 years. had a complete meltdown in Calculus 3 about 2 weeks in because I really couldn't understand a word that the instructor was saying. I'm like, this is not for me, apparently.
Calc 3. I got to Algebra 1, and I'm like, I can't do this. So Calc, that's pretty good. That's pretty impressive.
Well, I'm not saying, obviously it wasn't great. And so I switched to biology, thinking maybe physical therapy or med school, and ultimately was thinking med school. So I was off and didn't time the MCAT right. And I was working at an office furniture distributor that sold steel case furniture, which is the largest manufacturer of office furniture in the world. And the vice president of sales found out I was installing, like, it's a summer job that turned into, well, I'm just going to work here because I don't have a big class load. VP of sales found out and said, and you're too young to appreciate this, but said, hey, I think you'd be great at sales. Do you want to try it? It sounds like you've got a year that you're going to do nothing. And she said, I'll give you, I think it was a $25,000 salary and a pager. And I was like, man, you had me a pager. Like, you didn't even have to throw the salary in there. It was so cool. And then the short version is, I really liked the physical environment, built environment. Like, that was my first exposure to it. And I loved consulting with clients on how to make their, office function feel better and, support what they were trying to do. So they gave me this, I'll never forget, there was an opportunity. Cable Services Group, CSG, was building a new building or expanding. And all the senior sales people had tried to knock down that door before. And it just so happened that I clicked with the real estate person. And I remember it was a $37,000 commission check, like, in the first 90 days. And at the time I was like, wow, this is easy. Like, I am going to I'll probably just have to do this for 7 years, then retire. Cause boy, you're talking 2000, or you're talking 90, 95. So yeah. And then, and then Steelcase started a development company, a wholly owned development company. And it was really centered around a manufacturing approach to buildings. So it was a kit of parts, it was raised flooring where your HVAC and electrical and data all run under the floor. So it's got a ton of flexibility. And then they incorporated a lot of their, people, development and research that they had done. So lots of natural light, indoor air quality, all sorts of things. And they thought it was, kind of going to be the way to develop office buildings of the future. The reality was it was really geared for and worked really well for call centers. And Omaha, still at that time had, I think, as many call centers as anywhere in the country. And so there's a longer version. It's with that I think people appreciate, because I was always a young guy in the room. Okay. Now I'm not. So, and you realize that, like, it just overnight, you're like, wow, I'm the old guy in the room, like right now. But I was always a young guy in the room, and I was trying to get in front of this CEO, this development concept. So I said, we're gonna sell these buildings and sell more furniture in Omaha. And he dodged my call for a long time, and I pulled hey, I'm going to be in Chicago. Do you have 10 minutes? I'll pop in. And I didn't have a flight or anything. And he said, yeah, come on in at 9:30 or whatever. So I flew to Chicago, sit in his office. He's like, look, kid, kind of the proverbial pat me on the head, and said, we're starting in tier 1 cities. Like, we just signed Atlanta. We've got New York, Chicago, whatever. Omaha's just, we'll get to you down the road. I said, well, to help me understand, like, what do you care if I sell a building for you? No effort on your part. Wouldn't that be a great thing? It's like, okay. So then, so we went to this training to really learn what was unique about the building materials, everything else. And we sold the first workstage. It was called Workstage. And we sold the first Workstage building in Omaha. and it was PayPal, formerly X.com.
Really?
Yeah. And then we ended up doing the second building at the time. That was after eBay purchased PayPal, but that sort of launched my development career. And John Lund's, to sell that concept, I needed a real estate partner. And I knew John Lund a little bit socially. And when asked him if he'd, be willing to be the real estate partner in this. And so we did that first building. And John, we started meeting regularly. And I think John was just blown away by the corporate relationships that I had because, we were doing, that's all I did.
Yep.
Office, real estate, and facilities, clients. And we get, 6 months into this, we sell that first building and, and it starts the entitlement process and all that. And he's like, you need to come into real estate. And then I saw how much more the real estate and development side was getting paid versus the furniture, the low margins in furniture. And I said, okay, I'll try it.
Yeah.
But there's a point here, but he said, come run my brokerage division. And because I was running sales and front of house at Shepherd's. And I said, I will, on one condition. I said, that brokerage model is completely broken and it's going to be disrupted by technology and I can't wait. So I don't want to run a broker. I don't want to run a brokerage firm as is. And then I remember telling this story 7 years later and nothing had changed. It's just bizarre how slow the real estate brokerage world was to adapt to technology and change, and in a lot of ways still is. But
so how long ago was that?
That was 2003.
2003. Yeah. Has the brokerage, did you step in and take over the brokerage?
I did.
Okay. And did you implement technology at that point to help adapt and change?
Yeah, we tried and did. And I think ultimately it took a few years. But where I had been before was very consultative. Identify the needs and try to solve whatever problems those are, right? Or proactively, solve problems that they can't even see. And I felt the best way to do that was for all of my brokers to specialize. And we were sort of on the front end of that regionally, what was being done in major cities, because there's so many office buildings in Chicago that you're either an office tenant rep guy or an agency leasing guy for a 4-block radius, right? But in Omaha, everyone was kind of a generalist, so we started to do that. And we did. We tried to embrace technology and slowly but surely got there. That's what led us to Cushman Wakefield as well, because trying to develop your own systems and then revamp those every 2 or 3 years was laborious, and you made some mistakes.
What are some of those vacancies and gaps within the brokerage institution as a whole right now that you think need to be addressed or filled, or as technology continues to advance, that those are going to either progress or disrupt?
Yeah. It's just, to me, the whole world would change if the data was robust, accurate, and available. I mean, that's just a game changer for everybody. And it's way better. But, if everyone knew when lease expirations were, for instance, landlords don't want other people to know that, but then what lease rates were. And if there was visibility and transparency, it would be, I think, change the experience for our clients in a major way, in a great way. But I think, the industry is really afraid of that because the way that the fee business works is, and it used to be when I started, I remember the senior brokers would all lock their office when they left because they were afraid of somebody going in and rifling through their files and getting a lead.
Really?
And information, you got paid because you had information. And so there's still some of that resistance to true transparency. So
How do you see the business evolving in the next 10 years?
I think the disruptive moment that I thought was coming 20 years ago, we'll get there.
Yeah.
And, there'll be a lot more sort of online transaction opportunities.
Yeah. And do you think that the traditional model of brokerage has to evolve with that then?
I do. And it has. You would have never heard someone talk about adding value to a transaction. It's just like the phrases were at the table in the deal.
Yeah.
And so over the last 10 years in particular, I mean, you have true professionals. It developed true professionals versus just networking information seekers. And so, the service level that we're providing our clients and the industry's providing clients is vastly improved, but still has a ways to go.
You have a healthy perspective on seeing both sides of this. Do you think that disruption kind of bleeds into the investment side and some of the development side of it as well? And how's it going to affect, how your day-to-day real estate professional approaches, trying to capitalize on deals, whether it be off market, on market, through brokerage? How do you think that shakes through?
For sure. That's the $1 million question, right? But take triple net leased investment properties, for example. That has really been made a lot. That there's transparency in that world, and there's a lot more technology that you're able to use, right? If you're looking to purchase, no one's doing this right now, but because the interest rates where they're at. But if you wanted to purchase an Arby's and you don't care where it is, like or a coupon clipper or Walgreens, et cetera,
yep,
there should have been a single source for that, like an eBay for that, and I think there probably still will be, and for select property types like that, where it's a little more like online stocks, right? Something is going to happen in real estate, I believe, that's going to be like Ameritrade was for stocks.
It's like a single platform.
Yeah, and it doesn't work for all genres.
Yeah,
but there are genres where there's no reason that can't be streamlined.
Do you see companies move in that direction already, trying to develop that infrastructure to be able to be that platform?
I do. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And do different brokerages get to tap into that, or is it whoever can develop the platform and get the customer base controls the market essentially?
I think it'll be a third party.
Yeah, you think so?
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And some of the obstacles, one of the major obstacles is every state has real estate commissions.
Sure.
With various regulations on how they handle real estate licensing.
Yeah.
So it's controversial to say it, but that's probably the biggest obstacle to true transparency and a marketplace that is not just a collective of local and national people.
Yeah.
So
I'm
not smart enough to figure it out, but
I beg to differ on that. But yeah. So that's the brokerage side.
Yeah.
So 2003, you come and you take over the brokerage side. And now, but Lund also does a lot of property management.
Yeah.
So at what point did that kind of fall under your purview, I guess, as you've been managing and growing that company?
Yeah. So the quick answer is that was 2010.
Okay.
Where I became president of the Lund Company.
Okay.
And one of the first things I tried to do was there was a pretty significant divide, and which was completely natural in the business. Commercial property managers thought, brokerage was idiots and vice versa, right? So, one of the first things that I tried to do was zipper the organization together and really try to work together and lots of initiatives, et cetera. And the phrase, centered it around, just a brilliant slogan, One Lund. It was One Lund, which actually still, it's funny. We're doing a heart walk, and I saw the T-shirts today, and we still use One Lund quite regularly. And
That's great.
It said, one heart, one walk, one Lund. So
yeah.
But anyway,
yeah.
So I really tried to develop a better understanding for commercial property management, which at the time was, our stable. That's our stable revenue source. It allowed us to take chances and lots of other things because, you're getting monthly checks.
Yeah.
And
did you third party at that point? Or was
all
it
third party.
It was all third party.
Most third party.
Okay.
John and his legacy partners had started the business just to service their portfolio that they wanted to build.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But the third party management kind of grew to an animal in and of itself.
Okay.
And then from when I came in 2003 to 2010, I was solely focused on the third party management and a few development projects. And it had grown to a point where those three guys recognized, they're like, we don't want to run this,
Mm-hmm.
and so it made sense for me to take over everything.
Okay.
And the migration, we were blessed, lucky, had great timing. If you look back on commercial property management, really similar today that it was, years and years ago. Technology's helped certain things, but it's tied to a percentage of rent collections. And on the commercial property management side, those rents, if you look across the markets that we're in, office rents for the first 15 years I was in the business kind of, fluctuated a little bit up and down, but remained mostly stagnant. So all your other expenses and inputs are going up in cost, and your revenue stream, other than market expansion, doesn't get any better.
Yeah.
So, fortunately, we shifted and emphasized. Wasn't a shift. We just tried to grow the multifamily management at a time where it was a couple years before, apartment development and multifamily just really blew up.
Yeah. Just kind of out of curiosity, I feel like I know a few property managers, and everybody always says there's no money in management. Do you agree with that, or if a management company's actually run appropriately and you've got the right infrastructure in place, like it can be a pretty good revenue center for an organization?
Yeah, it is much more difficult to make money in commercial property management than it was 10, 15 years ago.
Okay.
Artificial intelligence and some technology platforms are helping to develop more efficiencies. So, you have to have some scale. Like there's various points of which in management where you're just being small is great, and then terrible.
Okay.
And then, as you grow and as you scale it, it just sort of ebbs and flows. It's 2 steps up, 1 step back. And then, you find, and then just over time, finding the sweet spot is, ends up being the challenge.
Okay. So there's a certain economies of scale that you get with a certain size.
Yeah.
And you feel like over the last couple of years with some new platforms and AI that's coming out, you're seeing more profitability in property management?
Yep.
You think that'll continue to improve?
I do. And now you're seeing, I think like on office and industrial, these commercial assets, you're seeing rent growth. If you look back from 2 years ago. So that covers, a lot of sins, if you will.
Yeah.
The multifamily management, and so is different. That requires scale, period. In my opinion, I mean, either you're really small and boutique, but if you're going to do it third party, we used to say, boy, it was really hard for us to make, to be profitable until we were approaching the 5,000 unit under management. If you've invested in the platform, which we had. Now, I would say if we were starting, I would say you'd have some real challenges and ebbs and flows until you got to about 10,000 units.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are good target numbers to,
Yeah.
I mean, throw out.
Yeah.
It's beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
So throughout the whole process, have you been developing and building projects the whole time? Or is that
Yeah.
something you've come onto the last couple years? Or I mean, what does that look like?
Yeah. So there were starting with PayPal.
Yep.
And then there were 3 or 4 other office buildings from 2003 to 2009, call it.
Okay.
That culminated in, those were ground up. And then the first sort of redevelopment that we did was 450 Regency, where we office.
Oh, that was your project?
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. That's a really cool project.
Yeah, it turned out good. And then, yeah. So we've always walked a little bit of a tightrope, and in early 2000s, our competitors would really use it against us. Well, they own real estate and you're competing against them. And over time, people understood that we were really doing projects with clients and for clients. And so most of what we do is third party. And so the conflict story went away. And we're not that, we don't do that many projects. So
Yeah.
what we do, yeah.
Well, a project that you did that I love that most people know about around here is the Farnam.
Yeah.
How did you come across that idea? Like when did it start? I kind of want to talk through that a little bit.
Sure. Well, and you too will appreciate this. Your first podcast that I watched, creative.
Yeah.
Creative solutions, real estate, creative investing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I loved the building. Always loved the building. We managed it. The whole story of how we got the management is another. It's a super funny story, but we probably don't have time for it today. But we managed it from, I think, 2007 or 8.
Okay.
And then
what was it before?
it was an office building. So
Okay.
U.S. West,
Yeah.
Quest, U.S. West, whoever it was at the time, I think it was U.S. West, built that property with the adjacent data center and parking garage, and it came online in 91. So the building, and it was modern, and it was very controversial because it kind of stuck out like a sore thumb, right? On the north end of the old market.
Yeah. Yeah.
All glass structure, etc. But I always liked it. I mean, it was built incredibly well. Certainly not overbuilt compared to what a speculative office developer would have done at the time.
Yep.
And so we had been managing it. The client we were managing it for, it was the only asset in their portfolio that was multi-tenant. They hated it. They were single tenant, credit lease buyers. They bought it in a Quest portfolio, US West portfolio. And anyway, so they said, we're going to probably put this on the market. I said, wait a second. Why don't we, how can we strike a deal?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I don't even remember the nuancing of that, because he had to get board approval, and they were like, wait a second, you mean our management company and listing agent want to buy the building? What do they know that we don't? And, it's a whole thing.
Yeah. So
back to your creative investing, in order for me to get that deal done, I contractually included them on the first 16 months of upside. I said, just to prove to you, I don't have a tenant in my pocket. I have no idea. I just believe in it long term. So, and we wrote them a check because we did sign a couple leases, and I can't remember what the sharing formula was, but anyway, got that deal done. Then office was pretty sluggish. We got to know the building a lot more, and we were just trying to figure out what the next iteration of it should be.
How full was the building when you bought it?
Well, Pacific Life had just moved out, so it was 40% full.
Okay.
280,000 square foot building.
Yeah.
And we looked at it, explored putting residential, converting some or all of it to residential. And someone approached me to sell it. And could have flipped it for a really big number, which in hindsight I probably should have taken. But I just was passionate. You know, it was like I thought it was going to be a legacy project for me.
Yeah.
But I found out they were going to do a hotel. They wanted to do it for a hotel, and they had done several hotels, so they knew what they were talking about. So I said, well, I should explore a hotel. I never wanted to get into hospitality, but I had met. But I said, if we're going to do it, I want to do top of market, best in class. Bring something to Omaha that doesn't have, that quite frankly I felt like it needed significantly. And so we started down that path, and I had met, I don't know if you're familiar with Thompson Hotels, if you've ever stayed at a Thompson. They just rolled up into Hyatt bought them a couple years ago. I think they had 22 around the country. I had met that CEO in LA at a conference. Good, cool dude. And his name was Rob Lowe, just like the actor. And, but he's super smart, you know? And I said, man, I love your hotels. So I reached out to him and I said, how do I figure out bringing a Thompson to Omaha? And, he sent his chief development officer to Omaha. And I remember like halfway through the second cocktail with him that night at dinner, he said, Jason, I'm just going to be honest with you. The last thing on the planet I want to do is a project in Omaha.
Really?
But he says, if Rob tells me to do it, I'm going to have to do it. He said, but I will help you. Like we're going to underwrite it. We're going to look at the floor plans. We're going to do all this stuff. So he did. And Rob called me and said, hey, we're not doing the Omaha project. Just can't support the ADR, that they average daily rate that they needed for their hotels. I said, totally get it. I said, what would you do if you were me? And he said, I would call Marriott. They've got a soft brand called Autograph. That's the next best thing. And so I called the Marriott soft brands rep. And he was like, is this a joke? Because I've been trying to find an Autograph location in Omaha for 5 years. And
really?
then it just, kind of sped up.
Yeah.
From there.
Then
COVID hit.
Well, oh, okay. So when did you start the process?
So this was late 2019 when they said no.
When Thompson said
no. Sorry, it's sometime 2019 when they said no.
Okay, maybe
April, and then we chased Marriott, and the ball was rolling.
Okay,
and finally had this required additional equity.
Yeah.
So, and we had bought it in a tick because I had some 1031 investors. And it required us to dissolve the tick. It's the most complicated. I could write a book on this thing, and probably will have to write a book on this thing at some point. But anyway, we had to dissolve the tick, bring in new capital. At that time, Opportunity Zone legislation had been out. So it's in an opportunity zone. So we wanted to incorporate that because with some of the new equity, we had capital gains on it that they could reduce, and all the advantages of OZ.
Yep.
And then, TIF applications, enhanced employment, PACE financing, all the stuff that you typically do.
Yep.
And then so that took us a while, and we swung a hammer. We started demo, and then we're relocating office tenants too. First demo hammer starts swinging in January, and in March, the world is shut down with COVID. I mean, just like, what are we doing?
What are the odds? Yeah. So then the construction just kind of like stop for a while?
No, we went forward, just, which it turned out to be pretty good timing, honestly. We opened in May of 21 and had sort of one more, I think late summer or October, Douglas County did the mask mandate and event space, kind of retraction again. But realistically, we were able to limp along, and staffing was super hard. The traffic wasn't quite there, to get us going. But I mean, remember the Eagles played a concert late that fall, and that they had 56 rooms. Never forget it. And Angie and I, my wife, and that hotel was our baby, so we're there a lot, and we're just jumping in and doing whatever we can. And they're like, hey, we had housekeeping, couple call off, and Eagles rooms are not ready. And so she and I made beds. I don't know how many we made. We didn't make all 56, but we did a full floor, and
Wow.
I have a new appreciation for
Yeah.
what that entails.
That's incredible.
So that's it's interesting to me too, because the design is super unique, and like you could tell, we were talking about this before we started recording. It's just so curated and very much thought through. And if I understand from talking to you before, you and your wife were like really involved in the design of that. Is that?
Yeah. No, and thank you for that compliment. We're just super proud. We didn't get it all right, but most of the things we wouldn't change. The blessing of the curse and the curse of going through COVID was at times our Marriott project lead was furloughed. So there's a lot of brands, there's a lot of standards. Autograph collection is really amazing and unique because, and their tagline is exactly like nothing else. So they have to have unique brand, unique design, unique story. However, the brand project leads still have to kind of buy into your story, buy into what you're trying to do with the design. And sometimes they get hung up on certain things. Well, for a long time, we were sort of in the dark. We had really good design consultants. To do an autograph, you have to hire a Marriott approved design and branding firm. Ours was in Chicago, and our local, architects were Alley Pointer. So I tell people there's a lot of couples that, almost divorce over building a house. That's not us. Like we loved every minute of it. We probably disagreed 3 times. Angie won all 3. She was right on all 3. But things like sometimes people overthink it. I've, developed a passion for environments of all kinds a long time ago. So wherever I'm at a place, I just kind of geek out and look at it and see what's working, what I like, what I don't. She's sort of the same way. So we just took our travel experiences at hotels we loved, like the Thompson, and said, okay, here's our list of things that we hate about hotels. There's not enough hooks to put your washcloth on. Like, Angie was, one of her big things was there's no place for, ladies to put their leg up to shave their legs. So in the corner, we did this shaving ledge that everyone called Angie's shaving ledge. And just things like that, right? It was a stupid list. It wasn't, because it was meaningful. Yeah. Like, those showers that you reach in and you can't turn it on without getting some part of you wet. Yeah. We're like, we're not doing that. Yeah. Like the handle is going to be out by the door. Yeah. Yeah. As it turns out, that little wand, if housekeeping doesn't turn it away from the door, you can get wet still, but they're supposed to turn it away. Anyway, things like that. Yeah. And we knew what we liked, and we went through, I think we drove our design team crazy at first because it was, they were trying to go, fairly modern, and it's contemporary, but we wanted it to feel comfortable. So ultimately, when we were developing the brand story, the internal name for the hotel was the Humble Billionaire. And we just wanted it to represent like the shock and surprise that people feel when they come to Nebraska, Omaha, Lincoln, or whatever, and they find rich cultural offerings, amazing restaurants, people that are, amazing, and, just cool things to see. We wanted that to happen on a micro level in the hotel. And so I think we pulled it off. The best compliment we get is when people say, I can't believe I'm not in New York or Chicago or whatever. Yeah.
It definitely, you're in a great location, so it's very walkable, which is kind of gives it that big city feel. We don't have to have your car everywhere. You drop your car off and you can walk to the restaurant, walk to the concert. Yeah. And yet when you're in the space, very, very well done. Really, really enjoy it.
Yeah, thank you.
And, being Nebraska guys, obviously love when people do projects outside of the typical Nebraska mold, Hampton Inns they're great. They have their place, but every now and then somebody steps up and does a project like that, and something that you're proud of, to be like, hey, you make sure when you come to town, you should stay there. Right. And leaves a really good impression that way. So, I do have another question on that though. I'm curious. You said the equity and all these different things are. You named a bunch of different items. I'm curious. Could you walk through what the capital stack was on that deal? Do you remember?
Sure.
Do you remember what all the different components were to it?
Sure. I mean, I listed most of them, but I mean, we had, obviously real cash. And when we first bought it, one of our investors, he was the only one that kind of had the balance sheet to cover the personal guarantees. So he did, and he got a slightly lower price, per share as a result of that. I don't know, equated to, since I know you love this stuff in the business.
Yeah.
I can't remember, 3 or 5%,
Okay.
something like that.
Yeah.
And then when we dissolved that and brought in additional equity, we gave people opportunities at the time. And it's me and my largest investor, who's a good buddy of mine, that took on the personal guarantees and took that. So
Okay.
So there's a little sliver equity, but mostly cash on the equity side. And then we did TIF.
Okay.
We did enhanced employment zone, and we did PACE financing, and then senior traditional debt.
And then senior.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I always find it fascinating on these big projects, how you look at the cap stack, and it's just, there's all these different layers and the complexities you have to walk through and all those different things.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Was there a piece in there? Did it all go pretty seamless, or was there looking back, would you have done it differently, or?
Knowing the challenge with the project, we're super proud of the hotel. And at the time, we were putting the second wave of equity package. When we knew we were going to do hotel and it was a new investment, I remember telling people, look, hotel's an operating business, right? It's not quite real estate. The office is going to be fine. Like, Gene Leahy's going to be renovated. There's going to be a streetcar. I think there's going to be a resurgence back to the office in the urban core, and we're going to be perfectly positioned. The riskiest part of this was the hotel. Sitting in this chair right now, post-COVID, the office has been on the decline. And now we're just working on the next iteration, which likely starts this fall. And that is a continued migration away from office. We're going to add some hotel rooms, and then we're going to convert at least 3 floors to luxury condos.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So knowing what I know now,
yeah,
I would have done it differently. I would have converted away from office versus hanging on to the office dream. And the uses are, they coexist beautifully, office and hotel, and then residential, and probably in that order. But now, I think we've proven. Marriott recognized the Farnam as the Autograph Collection Hotel of the Year in December for North America.
Really?
And we were top 15 guest satisfaction scores, intent to recommend, across all luxury brands worldwide. Like, we're blown away. So our staff called us.
It's incredible.
They were at this annual awards deal they do at Marriott, and we get this call, and they're screaming and yelling and whatever. We have no idea. And they said, we just won Autograph Collection of the Year. Like, that is amazing. I'm assuming this is like winning an Oscar from your reactions, but we don't even know. And yeah, it was super cool. And they got back. I remember, some of the staff was like, I've been in the hospitality business for my whole career, and that was the greatest moment of my career. And we were just all fired up, celebrated with them.
That's incredible.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well deserved.
Very much so.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Very much so.
All that sounds like Jason and Angie did something amazing, whatever. But the reality is that the canvas is the building, right? And what we did to it. But the only reason that it's amazing is the people and the culture. And the struggle when we started, and I've been amazingly fortunate to have been a part of developing cultures that are amazing, lasting, enduring. At first at the Lund Company, and then now at the Farnam. But it took us a while to get there, and there was really no shortcut for it. As impatient as we were, But man, now it's incredible because the property has a real soul, and I feel like every one of our staff members are sort of an extension of us, where we have hospitality in our heart.
Yeah.
We're of service.
Yeah.
And like to make experiences for people, and that just, it's every person down there is doing it. It's amazing. So
That's incredible.
Yeah,
That truly is an incredible accomplishment, and that can't be enough praise to you and Angie for that. I mean, and your people.
Yeah,
that's a culture is I think the most difficult thing, in this world to establish and have something be known by name, and the first thing that comes to mind is an experience of culture and people. That's a really difficult thing to accomplish. So it's very impressive.
No, thanks.
Well, whenever I talk to you, I feel like you're always talking about Angie, and you just speak so highly of her. And I think we all probably know plenty of people in this space that their personal life, business, it's just great, but personally, you're like, oh, there's a lot going on there, right? So,
Sure.
But you and your wife seem to have an incredible relationship, and I know you've got some great kids, and I guess selfishly curious to hear a little bit from your perspective. Like, you run this massive company, you do all this development work, you even talked about the private equity work that you do, and yet you have a relationship and a marriage that seems to be strong, and you're building hotels together, and you've got your kids, and how do you balance that as you are doing all of these things?
Sure. Yeah. I'm happy to talk about it. I mean, and be careful what you ask, because I'm very open book. It's just part of my deal. But
Well, I love that about you.
Part of my DNA. I think, so I have a failed marriage. Like, that is, if someone asks you the question, like, biggest regret in life or biggest failure or whatever, I'm going to say, with all of my core values, faith, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I have a failed marriage in my background. Now, the lemonade out of those lemons is amazing. And we could go in depth, but I remember Angie and I was first getting together, and I remember our first date. And we tell this story. People ask us our story a lot. And so I'm proud that, people recognize that, it's a great relationship. It's one that I've strived for. But, I said I was never getting married again. She's like, me too. No reason, ever. And like, here's what I won't do. Here's what I learned, yada, yada. Well, I remember leaving there, and I'm thinking to myself, Jason, you dummy, like, you're going to marry it. You're going to marry her, but here's sort of the punchline back to your question. We, during our courtship and when we're serious and engaged and maybe even first married, started noticing similar, sort of marital issues that I had before. And I know she would say some of the same. And it dawned on me, it made me realize that, maybe a lot of it was me. Right. And I needed to evaluate how I was in relationships. And so I read a couple books, and I share one with a lot of people, because like the first 4 chapters, it really dawned on me that some of the problems that I was having in relationships were mostly because of the way my expectations of them and the way I behave to get those expectations, met. So I was I was inspired enough that I brought in that I had a men's only event at Lund. This is the hardest thing I can remember doing, but I just felt nudged, and I know you're both faith forward. I mean, I was feeling like smacked over the head, nudged that I needed to like share my experience. And so I remember there was, I think, 54 guys at an offsite, and I said I was going to share, my lessons learned in divorce and remarriage, et cetera, and what I learned about myself. And I opened up with, like, there's some statistics in some of these books, like that 7 out of 10 women, said that their one request from their husband, if they could have anything, wave a magic wand, is that they would be a little more affectionate with her in public.
Mm.
And so I opened up with that. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like that's how low the bar is for us guys.
Yeah.
And we feel like we are, responsible for the family, right? We feel like we're the protector provider, you know.
Yep.
But when I say, are you responsible for having a thriving marriage to men? Not many say yes. Like they're, oh, well, I mean, she's got to do it, whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, I really personally looked at myself and said, look, if this is going to be successful as I want it, then I have to take full responsibility. Mm-hmm. And we went to this Marriage on the Rocks seminar at our church. That was game changer too.
Really?
And we still, live by those principles. One of which is, the law of courtship, and, men want to be respected. Women want to be pursued and adored, and they want time. And so, and in that book, we were trying to blend 4 children, which is hard, the hardest thing you'll ever do, or I'll ever do. And it said, in the book, it was really emphasized spending time, that the relationship between wife and husband was more important than the relationship between mother and kids and father and kids, because that's where the foundation is. Mm. So we took that to heart, and we really, I think, obviously everybody could do a lot of different things, and I could have been a better step, dad for a lot of years, but where we're at, I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah. So do you think you've seen fruit from that then?
For sure.
Intention, like being very intentional. And if I'm understanding you right, you're saying priority number 1 is you and Angie, right? Yep. Like that's priority number 1. Yep. And then there's the kids are able to see that and experience that. And then that just produces an environment in a household that is helpful and fruitful and healthy for your children. Is that
100%? Yeah. It really helped 100%. And so now we're almost empty nesters. I say empty besters, but because I get cheesy. But so our son is junior in high school, and the 3 daughters are down in Lincoln in college having a blast. But I watch some of our friends that still have great relationships, but are having to adjust to this new life of spending significantly more time with your spouse. Mm. And we don't have to, like, it's completely normal. We're just, sort of rolling.
Yeah. So that came from you intentionally, when you started to court and pursue Angie, saying basically our friendship, our relationship is going to be the number 1 priority here. Like we need to be good. But it's interesting to go, because I do feel like culturally, there's kind of this divide and conquer mentality a lot of times, where it's like, when we're raising the kids and you're going to do your thing, you're going to do your thing. Yep. And instead you guys just lean into it. You're like, we're going to be good. That's number 1. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to race together. That's your approach?
For sure. That doesn't mean you don't have to. Sure, functionally, you have to divide and conquer. And there's a lot of, a lot. The programming that families take on these days, and we did too, is just ridiculous. We had every sport and, all that stuff too. But it just, it just has to be a priority if you really want, it depends on what the outcome you're after. Yeah. Like I wanted a thriving relationship with a partner that I wanted to grow old with. Right. And that takes work. Yeah. So, and here's the key. Like she's awesome. Like she puts up with me. It's not like I'm the easiest. Intentions are good. There's intentionality, and we do a lot, and I do prioritize the relationship, but it takes 2 people that are really wanting to put effort in.
That's incredible.
And by the way, when you're younger and the kids are younger, I mean, that's the most chaotic time in your life. So there's just going to be stress. Yeah. And how you figure out how to, come down from it is up to you.
Yeah. I appreciate the intentionality though, right? Like just going back to like the center of the core. Yeah. With us, we've got, or 5, 3, and 1. It's just chaos
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
But recognizing and saying like relationship with your spouse, like that has to be, even if you acknowledge like it's never perfect, right? But like leaning into it and trying to make that the center and the key. Even just think like little things. Like the first thing I do when I go home, like am I going to my wife, check with her, or am I going to go try to check on my 3-year-old?
Yeah.
Like, well, maybe I should talk to my wife first. Be like, how are you doing? You did good? Okay. All right. Now I'll go engage with this. So
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
yeah, it is.
Really, really good point.
We usually, if she's home and, with the kids,
Yeah.
usually she's
Yeah.
just handing you one of them, right?
Okay. Yeah. Here we
Yeah.
go. Maybe 2 of them.
Yeah.
That's true.
So, yeah.
That's true. I think that's a really, really interesting concept that you, it's almost a principle of identity. I think something that American culture loves to fall into is phases of life. Whether you're, we talked about it last time, kind of with work and rest, that a lot of times in your 20s, 30s, you're just committed to this idea of hustle, but there's certain principles that you need to have rooted that are non-negotiable. And I think that treating marriage with the same principality as you would with something like that, and saying, no, my true root here is my relationship with my wife, and my kids are going to come next to that, and then our hobbies are going to come after that. My addiction for golf is going to come after my commitment to my wife. Those are really important things that I think probably have led both to your success in your marriage. And then I think some of those principles are probably carrying over into the culture of leadership that you've had with Lund and doing some of these things like Farnam. I mean, that's just a very impressive demonstration of that.
Yeah, thanks for that. Well, along those lines, I probably know the answer. There's a funny story that Angie loves to tell where sometimes we can take this business guys, especially entrepreneurial business guys, we can take this intentionality a little too far. So I probably should have waited till we had, a couple glasses of wine in us, but I wanted to sit down and go through our annual goals for our relationship. And she tells the story. She's like, I start off with just a normal, like, strategic planning, discussion.
Yep.
And she says, I can't do this. I feel like I'm being interrogated by the FBI. I got a spotlight on me.
Yeah.
So, you got to figure out what works, but that didn't work. Dang it.
I've had an identical conversation, so glad I'm not the only one on that front.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My wife said, okay, now where's the contract? Like, okay, wait,
right.
done? No,
yeah.
All right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Put it back. So, Good.
That's fantastic.
Well, this has been great. I appreciate you taking the time.
Having me.
I really enjoy this. I enjoy you always taking the time to just invest in the younger generation too. And I know you got a million things going on, but I always learn something new talking with you. And hopefully this isn't the last time we sit down and have a conversation.
I hope not. But I'm trying to learn from you. You guys are smarter than I am.
Oh, yeah, right.
That's not true.
Right.
The old guys have to rely on you.
Oh, my goodness. All right. Well, thanks for the time, Jason.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
It's fantastic.